I wasn't prepared to talk Spanish, pero está bien.
Well, that's a good icebreaker, Joel. Welcome to my house. Um, I've been talking to you for a while. I've been wanting to sit down and have a conversation with you. You're a person to look up to, yeah, and I know you've been in the aviation industry for a while. Tell us a little bit about how long have you been here and what brought you to the aviation industry.
So I have a cousin, Daisy. You watching this? Hello, my cousin Daisy. She started working for the airline when I was about 14 or 13 years old, and I started
So that's
realizing.
been a while ago, right?
Oh yeah, it's been yeah. Thanks, man. Thank you. No, in the mid 90s. So she started working for. Actually, she started working there. You're right. She started working there in the 80s because I started noticing these things when I was about 14 or 15. I graduated high school in '98, and from there, I used to see her lifestyle, and I used to see how she used to travel a lot and all this stuff. And I don't know, I always felt this thing for airports. Every time I traveled, every time I went to an airport, I felt good. So I started working for American Airlines. If we can just throw names out there.
Yeah,
When
absolutely.
I was exactly, I turned 19 in training in Dallas, Texas.
Wow.
So I was going to college, and I remember it was one of those things where you're already 18 and your mom is trying to, and your parents are like, you can't do this, you can't do that, and until you live under my roof and all this stuff. And I was like, well, I guess it's time to get a job. So I actually got called from American in customer service as a gate agent. And I went to Texas at 18. I turned 19 in training. And that's when the lifestyle started. You know, once you join an airline, you start seeing like this other side of the world, which I think a lot of people can relate to. I think everybody will want to be. I always says that this airline, the airline business is like a rock star life when you're 19 years old because you have the ability to have breakfast in Bogota, lunch in New York, and dinner in LA, all within 48 hours. And I always found that attractive. So going back to Texas, I turned 19 in Texas. I went to work at LaGuardia as a ticket agent, and the career just started kicking off. I had a lot of energy. I had a lot of passion for the industry. I started learning a lot. Again, because my cousin Daisy at that time, she was still in New York and she transferred to Miami, but the boss in American, Mr. David Lombard, which I still keep in touch with, and he's always been like a mentor to me. He kind of saw that ambition that I had to grow within the industry, and at 20 years old, he promoted me to a customer service manager. Mind
Nice.
you, back then, it was all senior people. I think I was one of the first people who got hired at LaGuardia um, after like a 15-year freeze. So
Wow.
I was like literally the baby, and after me came some other new kids or whatever. But by the time these other new kids came, I was already a manager, and I can honestly tell you that I remember working at LaGuardia in 1999, 2000, when everything was not automated. When people used to show up to the gate to check in. So,
Wow.
like, you had 1 hour to check in the entire flight. Let's say 175 people on a 757 Boeing, and you had 30 minutes to check in everybody in, transition to boarding, and get that flight out no matter what. No matter what, you had to get that flight out on time. Everything was different back then. I mean, we weren't electronic. We had paper tickets. Everything you can think of was different. And when I started working in at that industry, and at about my 2 year mark, they started hiring more people my age, and I started training them. And I can honestly say, moving forward, I know of two guys who I'm still friends with who are very, very well positioned within the industry. Up to now, one transferred over to Hawaiian. I don't know the exact title, but deep titles within the industry, and it was all because of all that motion that we put into it. But at 19, 20 years old, I remember working up to 37 hours nonstop at LaGuardia, just with the delays, with the way we boarded, the way we did things. It was a different world.
So would you say that technology has definitely helped that
Oh,
industry?
absolutely. I mean, I used to have my boss used to tell me, you can't dedicate more than 25 seconds to a customer. 25 seconds. So you were there at the check-in counter and you wouldn't make eye contact because you had 30 minutes to check in an entire flight because everybody went to the gate. No one went to the ticket counter. And in LaGuardia being New York, business market, it's all business guys going back and forth. I should say Dallas. So you're there and you're checking in people and you don't make last name Rodriguez. Rodriguez. All right, there you go, sir. Thank you. Boom. Here's your seat. To the point that one day I remember a quick story. I'm over here checking in. I was like, all right, last name WU. Okay, WU. Yeah, WU. Yeah, sir. W what? He was Chinese. So yeah,
Wow.
you don't make eye. You did
And
back then.
nowadays you can
No,
check in 24 hours prior. Now technology has helped us so far when it comes to
incredible.
that.
Yeah,
As
nowadays you literally can't get away as a passenger. You can't get away with much because the tools that we have. Even now, transitioning over to a flight attendant, I mean, you know where everyone's seated. You know everybody's birthday. You know everybody's itineraries. You know how many points they have in their bank, like in their airline accounts. Totally different world.
so transitioning from American to your current airline, JetBlue. How long were you at American for?
So I was at American. I started in '98. I can actually probably get you a picture later on of my original ID. Look like a baby, man. I started in '98, and I was invited to leave. Well, we can get into that after. I was invited to leave American in the year 2004, which is the same year we started with our current airline.
Nice. And why were you invited to leave?
It's one of those things that you like to date. It's been almost 20 years and I still don't understand. It was one of those things that they say God's plan is perfect and sometimes you don't understand why. I wasn't meant to be there. I was not meant to be at that airline for the rest of my career. The details are as simple as me repeating an offensive joke, and this is a kid that was on the rise. I was a person that again started there at 19. By 20, I was already promoted to in management position, and I wanted to take over. I wanted to be, I wanted to be the next big boss somewhere in America and go there. And I was in a situation where I repeated something that was inappropriate, and I was, like I call it, invited to leave. A few days later, it hit me really hard. I mean, I still thinking about it now. I still get goosebumps because I didn't understand why this was happening to me when I put my heart and soul into this place and people and everything. But yeah, that happened. And quick story. There was a supervisor or a manager where every day at 3 o'clock, which was the start of my shift, we would meet interdepartmental. So I was customer service. The in-flight supervisor would come. The GO supervisor would come, and we all meet at 3 o'clock to get on the same page for the game plan for the
Mm-hmm.
day. There was a lady there. Her name was Pat, and every day I would say, "Hey Pat, how are you? And how's your son?" And I think she had a dog, and I would ask her, "How's the dog? And how's your son?" And this went on for a very long time. Every day at 3 o'clock. Pat wasn't the easiest person to talk to, but I am the type of person that I'll stick to something just to have that one bond with you. And that was it for me and her. Is how's your son and how's your dog? So that went on for years. Um, when I left American, and actually my sister put an application for JetBlue for me, because when I left there, it hit me really hard. I was 23 years old, and all of a sudden I'm unemployed. My dream just shattered. My world is collapsing to the point that I even got vertigo for like a while. And it was hard for me having to fly to Dallas with vertigo to fight for my job on my own and get turned down. So now I walk into this interview that my sister applies for me for JetBlue, and there's this lady named Pat there. And when the moment I walk into the airline, I mean to the for the room, there's the lady that I knew from American, and the first thing, and she was the hiring manager. The first thing I ask her is, "Hey Pat, how are you? How's your son and how's your dog?"
Wow.
And I'm not saying that's why I got the job, but I think I pretty much killed the interview, and but there she was. And this is a lady who I said, I for maybe 2 years or 3 years I asked her that same question at a different setting, And when I went distraught with very little hope, because I mean, my confidence was down, I was just destroyed. And when I go and there she was, and I said, that's the first thing I walked in. She looked at me, I looked at her, I said, how's your son and how's your dog?
Wow.
And 20 years later, here I am.
That's an amazing story. And so, being with JetBlue since 2004,
Four.
what what steps of that ladder did you still have that hunger as a child? Where what positions did you take within JetBlue, if any?
Yeah.
Because you
So,
you were so hungry, right? You were still about in your early 20s.
right. Yeah.
Now you joined this new airline that's also new. That have been around 3 years prior to you
Yeah.
joining. So, what did you do once you
So
joined this
one of
new
the
airline?
things I remember from working at American was when I used to brief the crew members, I was like, listen, there's this new airline that just started. People love them. Like, I work for a legacy airline at the moment. And being in a legacy airline, you worked a lot of senior people. Remember, by the time I got there, it was a 15-year freeze. And now here I come, and now I have my new friends. And now I'm telling them there's a new airline in town they're really nice. They're known for being nice. It was a game changer because I'm not saying we weren't nice at that airline at the moment. We were, but it wasn't the culture. The culture. This airline that we work for now, they were system interrupter. They came and they completely changed the game. They had new airplanes with TVs that was unheard of back then, with really nice people working on the
I
plane.
remember as a child going from Milwaukee to San Juan, and you had maybe 3 or 4 TVs in the whole aircraft. The TVs were in the aisle, so you had to
Oh
watch
yeah,
the
yeah,
TV leaning towards the aisle
yep,
because there was only four throughout
yeah,
the whole aircraft.
yeah. So I mean, you go from that to trying to tell people, listen, there's this new people in town, and they're really nice, and people really like them, and they only fly to Buffalo. So move forward a year, I'm like, damn, the same people that I was talking about, I find myself working for them. So when I came to, we could say the airline, right?
Yeah,
I know, I
yeah,
think I
yeah.
said. So when I came to JetBlue in 2004, it was a shock to me. I was shocked because everything was different. Here's this airline, and here's my new managers now. Because when I got hired for JetBlue, I got hired as a supervisor for Inflight. I was a supervisor, but I went straight to training. I went to the flight attendant training process. I did everything as a flight attendant, but when I was done with training, I was going to the office.
Okay.
So here I am in this new environment. I guess I had just turned 24. In this new environment, completely different. I came from a very militant legacy airline. Everything was black and white. Everything was black and white. Everything was pretty much one way, right? And here I come and I join this airline, and everything is so different. It took me a year. It took me a year into JetBlue to kind of relax. I said, this is impossible. Like, this culture. This is an airline that bases its main, everything was values based. I wasn't used to that. An airline that was values based. This is a corporation that now, instead of saying, well, you violated rule 32 over here, but at JetBlue it says, no, you violated the uh I just blanked out with our values because it's been so long. but, but integrity. Here's a whole set of rules based on values, integrity, or for me that was like, where are the rules? I needed to see the black and white. But the airline at that time was 4 years old, so that took a lot for me, kind of just like ease into it. Obviously I came from an airline that had wide bodies, and it was like working for me working for American at the time was like, I'm at the best place because we're the big boys in town. We have wide bodies and all kinds of airplanes, and our crews are all over the world and all this stuff. And now I find myself working for this little airline based out of New York that flew to like X amount of places with one plane. So honestly, to tell you
What
the
was it? It
truth,
was Buffalo, Fort Lauderdale.
Buffalo, Fort Lauderdale. Well, by the time in 2004, we had a couple more routes. We did. I think we even ventured a little bit out west by then. But for me, it was like, this place sucks. Like, I came from a place that we went worldwide in so many variations of airplanes, and now I felt constricted. And now I didn't even understood the way they thought. Like, what do you mean we're gonna base all these rules on values? That was hard for me to understand, coming from like a militant place. But a year into being in management, I said, you know what? I'm gonna go on the line. Like, I'm gonna just be a flight attendant. So in 2005, I stepped away from the managerial position and I started flying. And that's where my flight attendant career really started, because now I'm a flight attendant. Now I'm venturing
You're
out.
not in the
No,
office
I'm not in an
anymore.
office anymore. Now I'm working in little did I know that's where my passion was. I like working with people. I thought I liked managing people, but I really like working with people. Kind of just getting to know different people. Almost every other trip, you didn't fly with the same day with the same person, and man, that took. I mean, from for a while there, I was there flying, specifically flying. I would say about 6 years, just enjoying myself flying all over the place, different layovers, different people, different, just literally enjoying, having a great time. But then the managerial part of me started kicking in again. I was gonna say around 2011. No, I'm sorry, like 2010. um I have a buddy here of us here, Andrew Batista. He
Hmm.
was in the what at the time was with the In-Flight Values Committee, and
Hmm.
he was in charge of scheduling. And he would always tell me, "You should join the committee. You should join the committee." But I was like, you know what? I'm having such a good time just being a flight attendant. I'm good. But that calling of always representing someone or group and being a voice for your peers was always there. So I don't recall the exact year, but it was 2010, 2009, 2010 probably, because my son was already born. I applied for the In-Flight Values Committee, and I find myself not only joining the committee, but at the time the chairman had stepped down, and there was an open position to be the chairman of the committee, and I didn't hesitate. I went for it. I ran unopposed, and I was the chairman of the Values Committee for the Quality of Life branch for 5 years.
Nice.
And
And what did that imply, that position?
so that was probably one of my favorite jobs here at JetBlue, because it was everything you can do under the umbrella of a manager and as a spokesperson without having the responsibility of the title. So as the chairman of Quality of Life, you had a team. I had a team of about three representatives for every base, and we just attacked what I like to call low hanging apples. We identified where there was areas of opportunity to improve the life of a flight attendant at JetBlue, and we just went at it. And remember, back then we practiced what's called the direct relationship. Managers and I and crew members will work hand in hand to just go ahead and I think our attendance policy needs to be looked at. Well, let's look at it. Let's lock ourselves in a room for 5 days, empty room, start putting stuff up on the wall, just throw stuff out there, how can make it better, and then we start deducting and deducting. And honestly, that was one of my favorite things to do, was to identify, like, how can we make this place better? How can we help crew members? What can still make this place fun, honor the values, but like literally you mean business?
You know what's one thing I can definitely appreciate from you is the fact that ever since I've known you, I can tell that, and don't take this in a wrong way, that you may not be the smartest person in the room,
Well,
but because you surround yourself and don't shut down any ideas from anybody that is around you, you become the smartest person in the room.
well,
For the simple fact that you give everybody the same opportunity. It doesn't matter if you're the sixth chair in this
doesn't
committee,
matter.
you have as much importance as the first chair may have, or even as you being the
Right.
main chairman in the committee. You give everybody that importance, and everybody gets heard within your committee.
I appreciate that, because very early on in that part of my life, I discovered my leadership style, which is servant leadership. And I think that embodies exactly what you just said. I think it would be very cocky of not just me, but anyone to identify themselves as the smartest person in the room.
Absolutely.
I think that I would never.
You know,
Um, Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I would never. I would never. Um, but it's like you said, I'm not the smartest person in the room, but you better believe I'm gonna freaking surround myself by the smartest people in the area. So as a leader, fine, great. I'm the leader of the group. But the moment that I discover your strengths, I'm gonna highlight that. And I'm gonna make sure that everybody else knows that this is your project and you took the lead. And I love empowering people. That's why now I like flying like junior trips sometimes. I like flying with new people. I like to see what people are good at. And I think that even as that might be like my legacy later on, like damn, like I never reached exactly where I wanted to be, but so many people around me I've helped to develop them, and that brings me a lot of joy. It brings me a lot of joy that I didn't become the biggest and baddest, or in positions after a while just become titles. But I've helped put a lot of people in certain places because that was their passion, and maybe it was just me discovering that for me, my strength is empowering people. Like you're really good at this and you don't realize it. You should do this. And I've had a
Absolutely.
few people in my lifetime tell me, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now.
And
And
that's
mind you,
amazing.
it's almost like a coach. It's almost like a coach. You have a coach who taught you how to play football. You go off and you're a superstar, and your coach is still the coach. But if it wasn't for him, you wouldn't be a superstar. And I'm so like comfortable being that coach. I'm so comfortable like seeing how people progress because I progress too in my own ways and in my life I'm not gonna complain. You know what I mean? We've seen a lot of blessings just being here and doing what we do and being surround ourselves by a lot of people. But it's so rewarding to not be the smartest person in the room, but your team is so badass that guess what? You've just became, if not the smartest person, your team is so badass that you have no idea who the boss is. I think is such a beautiful thing to see because there's some leaders that I've worked with that they see talent as a threat. If you're on my team and you have a specialty, I can't feel threatened by that. I need to empower you because at the end of the day, my team, our team, is going to shine. And
Absolutely.
some people can't get that through their heads.
And I think that's why I've been successful in business is for that same reason. I don't think I'm better than the person who drives my trucks. I don't think I'm better than my mechanics. I don't think I'm better than anybody who is around me. Because at the end of the day, if I see that you're very good at this certain thing, I do the same thing. I pull it completely out of
Yeah.
you, right? I want people to notice that out of you. Like you're not just an employee to me. You're
My
that
teammate.
person who works with me. And in fact, I see it the other way around. Being a business owner, I see it as I work for you, right?
Yeah.
If you tell me, "Hey, I need new tires on a truck." Guess what? We're going to get you new tires. Because if that's what it takes for you to excel at what you do, I need to listen to you.
Yep.
You're the one that's on the road.
Yep.
You're the one that knows what it is that you need. I can't sit there, even though there's statistics that may say,
No.
oh, well, you get this many miles per tire, or you get, no, because there's other things, there's other variables. So if you're telling me you need that, I need to make that available for you in
Absolutely.
order for you to excel.
Absolutely.
So I think that's one thing that has helped me with my businesses, which is the same thing
Yeah.
that you're talking about. Let's pull out the best out of every single person
Yep.
and let's show it to the world,
Yeah. Yeah. I,
right?
I, I believe in pulling the strength, identifying everybody's strengths instead of focusing on your weaknesses. Is whatever I lack, you have, and that's just gonna make it such a much better team. And I totally agree with what you said about anyone that's on your team. You don't listen to statistics. You listen to the guy who's out there every day, who's driven through those roads back and front. That's the guy you listen to. Not the statistics, not that, because what works for someone is not going to work for you. So I choose to listen to what's referred to as a subject matter expert. I like experience, and I think that's where when there was a project that we had at JetBlue, where it was the aircraft reconfiguration. Wow, what a team. We spent almost 3 years in that project, and that was pretty much reconfiguring the entire inside of the aircraft, reinventing what's cart service. Every airline's done carts for years, but we had a team, and a lot of those talented people now work for other airlines. But at the moment, we created a team, 3 year project. Went to Germany to identify different parts to bring down the first aircraft. But I just remember that team specifically because everybody had a strength. Everybody had a strength. We all had tons of weaknesses because this is a venture, but everybody focused on the strength, and that team led to our product today. And yes, there's room for improvement. There's probably been improvement. There's been tweaks, but that specific team, I think there were about 20 people deep. We traveled the country. We went different shifts. We worked on different airplanes. We went to different airlines. We observed. We did. I have pictures of I remember the whole iPad thing. I said, well, we need some identifier so we can address people by name. Like we need technology too to be a big part of this. And the little window that I showed you in the front of the airplane, that
Mm-hmm.
was just an idea that we had. Like we need privacy too. And if you know, on our airline, the crew member doesn't have too much privacy. You go to another airline with bigger planes, there's so much more places to hide. But we have people in our planes for up to, scheduled up to 13 out 12 hours and 59 minutes a day to be in this metal tube with very little room, very little privacy. You see how some crew members have to eat. You see how the style that we get used to, being in a very confined space up to scheduled, 12 hours, 59 minutes a day. But sometimes we're in there for up to 18 hours. And,
Absolutely.
and, and that's why I appreciate all the teams that I've been on because it's all been crew member feedback. And honestly, I'm the type of person, I don't care if you've been here a month or you've been here 20 years. I just finished telling a crew member my last trip Thursday. She was a number one, and she called me to see how I felt about a decision she was going to make. I said, do not let seniority intimidate you. You're in charge. Whatever you say, as long as it's safe, I'm going to back you up. Don't let seniority intimidate you. You have the experience. You've been here long enough to make this call, and I will back you up. And I think that mentality, like I told you when I flew with you
Uh-huh.
for 4 days that we spoke forever, I said, Alex, I think you and me have the type of mentality that like we cracked the code. It's not that hard. It's not that hard,
Absolutely.
especially in our environment. It's one of the easiest and best kept secrets in the tax bracket, and it only gets hard when it gets hard. But on the 9 out of 10 times, sometimes 10 out of 10, it's a manageable situation. You choose how you react to things. There's someone acting up. I always tell customers when they start getting to a certain level of, listen, I have 161 people looking at us right now. I'm not gonna let it's not gonna happen. Or I tell myself this: I'm not gonna let I have 161 people looking at me, just because there's one person is acting up. I gotta worry about not him. This one's manageable. I gotta make sure that the under 161 people feel safe and feel comfortable. So it's this is a type of job and industry that you it's not that hard, and we can relate it to life. Like it's all how we want to react to it.
Absolutely. I feel like people make the job harder than what it is, right? Yes, we have certain situations that um, we have to address while in the aircraft, whether it be a medical situation or something safety related. But we have a team,
Yeah,
and
use
and
your
and
resources.
and we use our resources. Recently I had a medical. I told the number one, I was like, hey, make sure you call to see if we have medical assistance on the aircraft. I had two RNs. I had I had so many medical people. All I had to do was turn into a secretary
Yeah,
and document everything that was going on, verify that they were who they said they
yeah.
were, and that was it. Because there was medical assistance on the aircraft.
And some
So
people need to
it's
learn that.
it's as simple as you make it.
Yeah, I think it's very powerful when you step back,
Absolutely.
when you recognize the strength around you, when you recognize that you're not the smartest and you don't have the capabilities and qualifications of other people, I think that's when people go wrong. I think if you had a medical in that situation and you played all the roles, or you were trying to be the doctor, when you have a nurse and probably a surgeon sitting in 15B, I mean, you got to use your resources. But I think it goes back again to leadership. I think it's important for a leader, and to a person that I like to consider myself or ourselves as people who crack the code, is take a step back. Take a step back. You have resources. You have people. You have you're not him. You know what I mean? Step
And
back.
even if you were him, you don't
Yeah.
have to
Yeah,
be
you don't
him.
have to be him. You know what I mean? Take a step back and use your resources. I think that's part of, again, going back to the leadership conversation, I think that's one of the biggest successes of being a good leader, is utilizing the people around you. And in our environment, I think it's crucial. I think people who fail in this industry are people who try to do it all themselves, and people who complicate the situation. I mean, again, you've been here X amount of years, and I've been here X amount of years, and every day I go to work like it's my first day. No 2 days are alike. And I think it's, you need to humble yourself mentally to say, this person started last year, but I can learn a lot from this person, because I I might you might start going old school. I refuse, and I don't want to get old
No,
mentally.
of course.
Mentally.
You know, let's go as simple as recently I flew with somebody that was 3 months in. I'm going on 7 years in November. Right? 3 months in, I was telling her, "Wow, your lunchbox, it looks so nice and built." And she was like, "Let me show you what I did." And she opens it up, and she bought the same exact size plastic basket and put it inside. I've been in this industry for almost 7 years now.
Never thought
I
of it.
never thought of that.
Never thought of
A
it.
person with 3 months in, and I'm like, the next day I went, I bought the bowl, and
That's
now
it.
my lunch bag looks perfect. But it's that. It's not limiting yourself to growing, not thinking better that you're better than the next person because they've only been here 6 months, because they've only been here a year.
That's it.
You have to make sure to understand that there's other people with better ideas,
Yeah.
and and
New
it,
ideas.
and it goes through the whole industry. And here we go saying that you could be the president of the company or the person who cleans the bathrooms. I guarantee you we can all learn from each other.
Absolutely. That's another, you bring up a great. I walk into the airport, and my hand walking through me with the airport, walking with me at an airport's annoying, because it's gonna take a minute, because I'm gonna say hello. Everyone, everyone gets a hello. If you make eye contact with me, I'm saying hi. And you bring up a good point, because even when we have the team that pushes the wheelchairs, and we get in from a flight from anywhere, that these passengers, customers, whatever we want to call them, are very heavy, and this new terminal that we're in, there's no, everything's physical. To go up those ramps, you know what? I help them,
Oh
because
yeah,
you have, this person could be a 50-pound person pushing a 150-pound person, and walking by them for me is not an option. It's
absolutely.
not an option. I can't. That could be my sister, my mom, my niece. It could be my neighbor. Again, it's not that hard. And now it's just not that one person pushing that chair. Now it's two of us. It's easier. So obviously, there's this. This is more of a happier mentality
And
kind of thing.
not
But
only that, you don't know whether that person you just helped was having a terrible day or not,
terrible
and
day.
you just made it that much better.
Much, and it happens. And when you least expect it, I don't like doing things to receive something in return. But when you help, or you're just polite, you see almost immediately the return, the blessing. And that
Absolutely.
happens to me. You know how it is. We say hello to 162 people, and we're not going to remember everybody, but they're going to remember you. They're
No,
going to
and it's so true. Look, recently after in our trip, so I got a Mosaic compliment. For those of you who don't know what Mosaic are, is our frequent flyers, right? The Mosaic that told me that her son had a peanut allergy.
All right.
So before we took off, right before the doors were closed, I briefed the way I'm supposed to breathe,
Right.
right? Just taking into account that her son has a peanut allergy.
That's it.
Something I do normal, something that it's part of my job description. And she wrote a letter and said, I want to write. I was on flight so and so. Alex Rodriguez was very courteous. I'm just paraphrasing her letter. I told him that my son had a nut allergy, and he briefed the rows. And to think that that's part of my job,
Right.
right? And yet she was so appreciative that I did that. And me knowing that I do that for absolutely everyone, right? It's
It's
what we
easier.
do. It's easier, and it's the little things for some people, right? Maybe she was in a flight where that didn't occur, right? But it's something that we have to
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
so just paying attention to those little details.
Paying attention to details, taking care of people, like you would want someone to say always that I want to treat everybody like I want someone to treat my mom if she was on a plane. And even those people who push the wheelchairs, you'll be surprised. You can't judge a book by its cover. That might be their part-time job. It's happened to me before where I've helped a person who you see in, let's just call it for argument's sake, in a lesser position or less paid position than you, and then you're somewhere else halfway around the world, or you're in another side of the city, and they're the business owner, and they're the ones in charge. And the minute they see you, that same smile you gave them in your environment, they give right back to you.
So
And guess who's the one now being privileged with their service?
absolutely, and let me
It
tell
goes a
you
lot. It's
that
huge for me.
that's such a true story because one day I was at work and I saw this older gentleman pushing a wheelchair, and when we made eye contact, he owns two tire shops here. And I was so caught off guard. I'm
There goes the
like, hey,
discount.
how are you doing? And he said hi. He's like, I haven't seen you in a while. I'm like, well, the last tires you sold me were extremely good,
Yeah,
but to think that some people may look at it as, oh, he has a lesser position. No, that man's a business owner,
yeah,
owns two
yeah.
businesses.
Yep.
He might be doing this because he wants to bring in extra cash to venture out and build something else.
Something.
Or he might be remodeling in his house and
Yep.
doesn't want to take from the business. And it's just, there's people out there who have 3, 4 jobs,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and I speak for myself. I do quite
Yeah.
a few
Man of
things.
many trades.
So, yeah, I do JetBlue, but I own my businesses outside of JetBlue. I deal with social media. I deal with a lot of things.
Right.
So not because you see us there. It's like I remember starting with JetBlue, and they were like, "Oh, let me treat you. We understand that you're new in the company." And I was probably making more than the person who was treating me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course that I wasn't gonna be arrogant and
Right.
be like, "Hey, I don't need what
Yeah.
you're
There's no
giving
room for
me."
that.
We enjoyed it,
Yeah.
and we sat down, we ate, we had conversations, and at the end of the day, we ended up splitting the bill.
Yeah.
But you can't be arrogant with what you do because that doesn't create a nice environment.
No, not at all. Yeah. Like I said, it's not that hard. It's not that hard to just, you have your training, but then you have also what should come natural to you, especially in this environment, because as much as we're here for comfort and relaxation and customer service, I think, and our number one, you know, responsibility is safety, and that's when your training happens. And this is where you have to be astute to the things that we learn and the recurrent every year. And like I said, I always joke around. I feel safer flying with a newbie than a person of my seniority because they just graduated. It's still fresh in their head,
they
you
know
know.
everything.
But you'll be surprised. I found myself in one really bad situation in 20 years, almost my 20 years, which was 2019, where we did a full evacuation of a 321, and probably
Which
one of
is
the
a
most
200
what
passenger for those of
yeah,
you who don't know.
and a full 200 full flight, 200 people, um, in one of the more challenging routes, which is from like Santo Domingo to Orlando. To make a long story short, this is one of those examples where I said, you know what, this job it's great, and it only gets harder when it gets hard. Well, that day it was hard. My day started at 4 a.m. I made it to Santo Domingo, no problem. On our way back, we had an emergency. Uh, we had to land. Well, we had to prep the cabin for an emergency landing. Probably one of the most nerve-wracking things to do. At
Into
the
the Bahamas?
into we actually landed in the Bahamas. Yeah, we were supposed to come to Orlando, but we ended up in the Bahamas. And just remembering that day, you have 200 people looking at you like you have a cape. You are their savior. Now everybody's listening because you're making the announcements. You're preparing this cabin not for landing. You're preparing it for impact. And then it takes a few minutes. For me, I went blank when the captain called me that day and told me that when, well, first of all, I heard a loud bang. And my coworker Miguel, we heard it together. We were in the front of the airplane, right? This is one of the longer planes that we have. Um, and Miguel turned pale. And I was in disbelief of what I heard. It was a loud bang. When you work in this industry for as long as you have, for as long as I have, you and your environment become one. If there's a sound, a noise, anything that's like not in place, you realize it, which kind of ruins me for like my vacation mode. Like it's hard. It kind of ruins
You
it.
still
Big
pay
time.
attention
Yeah,
to
because
everything.
I'm on vacation and I hear a ding and I can be your name. I'm like, what was that? Like, but in our planes, like we know when something sounds different. Well, this didn't sound different. This was an explosion of a sound, and right away, instantaneously, my coworker and I looked at each other like, how was that? So I called the captain and he says, "Just sit down. We have an emergency." So for that moment that I had to tell the rest of the crew I was flying as number one, from that moment on, that I sat down, and now my reality has changed from a normal day to now, God knows what's gonna happen. I went blank. I went blank. I was like, I didn't know nothing. I didn't know. I didn't remember. For 30 seconds, I went blank until something snapped inside of me. And again, maybe it's my leadership style, whatever. I picked up the phone, the intercom, and I did the all call, which calls all the flight attendants on the plane. We're all sitting down. And I just said, can we start reciting our commands for emergency landing, for ditching, because we didn't know where it was going to be in the water, or no, we're having an emergency. And once I think it was Elvis started saying the commands, my blankness went away, and you just start feeding each other. You start feeding off of each other. So okay, so now I have my commands straight in my hand. I know my training kicks in, like they call it. Your training kicked in, but then you start thinking about your family, bro. You start thinking about your family, and it's like, oh my God, I think, there's a possibility you can die. And look, I get goosebumps and my voice starts cracking, but it's because I remember that day, and I wish none of you experienced that, is when you have that 2 minutes to think that, oh bro, this is when this job
And
is.
did you guys have time to prepare the cabin?
Yeah, so we prepared the cabin, but right before you go into battle mode, your insecurities kick in. You are like, you start thinking about your family, your kids, your wife, your parents. You start thinking, but then you start looking around you, and you have 200 people looking at you, and that's when that training and that professionalism just comes. That cape, you put on that cape. You're like, all right. So you put your family to the side. You put them in your pocket. You put your kid in your pocket. You put your wife in your other pocket. Your mom in your other pocket, and like, it's time to be a professional. And that's when you start just, I'm gonna survive this moment. This moment is survivable. There's no option. I have to do this because I gotta go back to my family. And it's crazy because you and the crew again, you start empowering. And now something I'll never forget. I was flying as number one, and this goes back to exactly what I just said earlier. I was in charge of the flight, but Miguel has an impeccable voice for speaking. He speaks perfect English, perfect Spanish, and he sounds professional. So guess what I did? I said, Miguel, for the next 5 minutes, my role is yours. You're gonna make all the announcements, which is my job, and I'm gonna stand in the aisle and do the demonstration because your voice and the way you communicate with people is so much better than how I communicate with people. I'm a great communicator, at least I've been told, but Miguel was so much better than me, and I recognized that. And going back to the conversation, I took that step back, and I said, this is where he needs to shine, and I need to step away because this guy is stronger and better than me at this situation. He made all the announcements how I would never have done them. He has an authoritative voice, and he got through to people. The moment that was over, I look at the next step, I'm back in my role. All right, let's switch again. And that's how I went. So fortunately, that day we landed safely in the Bahamas. Uh, there was a suspected fire in the belly of the aircraft. That has never been confirmed to me. But the temperature was rising.
Gross.
So we actually ended up, what we started doing was slowly letting people out through a back staircase. And the Bahamas had just gotten hit by a hurricane. Remember, I have 200 mostly Spanish speaking people, which, by the way, you have to kind of like what you're taught in your training is a base. But you have to think outside the box in that situation because one of my ABPs I was running at the time did not speak English. I had to brief him and do everything I've been taught in English. I had to do it in Spanish. In my best Dominican Spanish with sound effects and everything. Loco, mira, aquí tú tienes que coger esta puerta y tienes que subirla por aquí y le metes sonido. Pero loco, yo no entiendo cómo. Mira, así, fum, y pum, y pam. Like you start, you get through to people how you're supposed to get through to people. You're on a timeline. You're about to crash, technically. You know what I mean? You're about to hit impact. So that was, crazy. One other funny story I remember, there was a poor old lady in row one, and we're about to, prepare for impact. So what we start yelling, brace, brace, brace. And this sweet old lady in row one looks at me in her most genuine look and me dice, mi hijo, ¿qué es lo que tú dices? Right? And I said, señora, brace, como le enseñamos, brace. And she looked at me for about 3 seconds. She's like, oh, I got it. Pray. You're telling me to pray. And then she goes like this, right? Mind you, we're about 20 seconds from impact. And here's this lady saying, oh, I got it, mi hijo. Like, let me handle this. And she goes, Señor, ayúdanos. She started praying. She thought that I was screaming brace, but I was screaming brace, but she understood pray. And she looked at me like, don't worry, I got you. And I'm gonna land this plane by prayer. And bro, we landed, and we actually ended up evacuating the aircraft. And remember, Bahamas had just gotten hit by a hurricane. I have 200 mostly Spanish speaking people now scattered and being pushed through this slide. This steep slide. One of the scariest things in the world is when you're actually evacuated in an aircraft. That for me was like the moment. I'll never forget. Right before I pulled that lever for the door to open and the slide to deploy, I was like, here we go. Like crap. We only do this in scenarios, in training. And here I am. Man, that thing is steep. And you look down and you're holding on for dear life, because it's true. You got to hold on for dear life, because as that slide was deploying, I had people like pushing into me to the point that my elbow was on someone's chest because they were trying to jump and that slide was still inflating. So, and you're holding on and then it's just all mayhem. And then trying to, again, be the responsible person with that cape, because these people are also looking at you like, you're about to save my life. And you start throwing people down the tubes and all into the slide. And then people started scattering. Because if you know one thing about the Dominican culture, they'll make a tragic moment into a comedy.
Oh yeah,
they're just genuinely funny people. There was this other lady. She was on oxygen where everything was calming down, and everybody had like kind of the mess was like the dust was settling, and she's on oxygen because I think she got like talk about an 85-year-old lady throwing her down a steep slide, but when everything was calming down, she's on oxygen with the paramedics, and she goes like this to me. She's like, shh, shh, ven acá. So I'm just running around from place to place trying to, still help people. And I stopped dead in my tracks. And she takes her mask off. She says, tú me debes una papita.
He owes her some snacks.
You owe me a snack. And then she puts her oxygen mask back on and like nothing happened. Here I am once again, cracking up in a horrific situation. When the lady started praying, we're about 10 seconds from impact, and I honestly inside, like, I thought it was cute and hilarious that this lady thought that my brace was her command to pray for us. So that it was just like an insane experience, which every time I tell this story, I start cracking up or I get emotional or everything, because for me, I was on vacation the very next day. My entire family, about 30 of them, were waiting for me in Cancun.
Wow.
And I remember calling my wife after it was all said and done, like, babe, I just had a huge emergency. I'm fine. Don't tell my family. I don't want them to worry. My family was watching it live on Instagram because there was a customer on that plane who was either an influencer or a comedian that did the whole evacuation live.
Wow.
Oh yeah. So my family was watching me evacuate an aircraft live on Instagram. So that was, for me, it was a crazy experience. It really hit me. It got to me when I got to Cancun the next day, and like 30 of my family were waiting for me, and they're like, "Dude, this could have been a different situation." And I think that's what a lot of people take for granted because the job does get comfortable, you know, and that's back to the point where, this plane makes a weird noise, you're gonna know. But normally it's just a very, you trust that your pilots, that your equipment, that your airplane is in good shape, and it becomes the norm. But when something is not normal and you go back and life goes back to normal, you realize how blessed we are that any day could be different. I mean, it doesn't have to happen at work, it could be anywhere. But like, just coming out of that one situation, and when I saw my family again, all those people I had in my pockets hours
Now they're out of your
earlier,
pocket.
now they're out of my pockets again, and it was like, man, I'm not gonna lie, there was some tears involved,
Wow.
and it's of celebration because that situation, and any situation can go, it could go the other way. But definitely a blessed position to be in.
Absolutely. And we're going to take that time and we're going to finish today's video with that. Uh, we definitely want to get across that these are our views and opinions. They
Absolutely.
don't reflect any company that we may have mentioned. Um, we do want to share a little bit more with you guys. Let us know whether you liked what we brought to the table today. If you enjoyed it, we'd like to make a few of these, tell a little bit of our stories. I still want to share what brought me into the industry, how I ended up here flying.
Right.
So there's a lot more to bring. Let us know whether you liked it. Make sure you share this video. And thank you.
Pleasure. And again, this is one of those guys that you meet, and I wouldn't be sitting here right now if he wasn't specially different in a positive way.
Thank you. Thank you. I
You're a
appreciate it.
multi-talented person. You're a person who impacts our daily lives at work. I think you have an opinion, and having an opinion is very important. And what's beautiful about your opinions is that even if they're different, they're respectful, and you embrace your environment. And like I said, most people in our work feel you've been here so much longer because of your maturity and the way you handle, situations, and the way you make others feel. So I want to thank you for inviting me here, and yeah, hopefully we can do a few more of these. Um, there's so many better stories out there. I think I could be one of the first, but so many experiences out there.
Absolutely.
From different people, from different bases, different cultures. It's actually a true blessing to be here for as long as we have.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Yeah, no
Joel, once
problem.
again.
All right.